Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Courtney Ryan, and today I'm going to be talking about 6 habits that ruin relationships. A relationship will always present challenges and show us the parts of ourselves that we need to work on, but having a general understanding of why the following things I'm going to discuss can have a negative impact on your relationship could be helpful for you to know. Although many of you are single, I think this video can still be beneficial, and if everyone worked on these 6 things, the world would be a better place. The first habit that absolutely ruins relationships is complaining about your significant other to other people outside of the relationship. Instead of speaking directly to your partner about concerns, challenges, addressing conflict you might be having, etc., you go to other people outside of your relationship to vent or to complain. Not only is this completely inappropriate and disrespectful to your significant other, it's also unhealthy. Complaining about your significant other to other people can be detrimental to a relationship for a couple different reasons here, and a habit that I am noticing become far too common. And yes, posting a video on the internet complaining about your partner counts too. I cannot fathom doing something like that. I just can't believe this is happening, so I had to put this as number 1 on my video. This can be detrimental because it's a complete violation of trust. If you are the victim of abuse or something like that going on and you get outside help, that's not what I'm talking about here. But if you're just constantly complaining about, oh, he didn't take out the trash, oh, he didn't do this, he didn't do that, and you're just bad-mouthing your partner all the time to other people, it's a complete violation of trust and it's just disrespectful. Constantly complaining about your partner can lead to a cycle of negativity and make it really challenging for you to see the positive aspects of your relationship as well. Also, seeking validation or advice from others instead of communicating openly with your partner can hinder effective problem solving and conflict resolution. It's really important to address issues directly with your partner, as open and honest communication is crucial for maintaining a healthy relationship. Instead of complaining to others, a good habit to have is to consider discussing your concerns and feelings with your partner directly, focusing on constructive communication and finding solutions together. If you want to improve your habits and acquire the skills that contribute to a healthy relationship, consider therapy with our sponsor for today's video, BetterHelp. Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Regardless of if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human who lives in this world who's going through a tough time, therapy can give you the tools to approach your life in a very different way. It sure did for me. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and more accessible, and this is such an important mission because finding a therapist can be really difficult, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online, it's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. There's a link in my description. Clicking that link helps support this channel, but also gets you 10% off of your first month of BetterHelp, so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. And because finding a therapist is a little like dating, if you don't really fit with that therapist, which is a common thing with therapy, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost without stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. So if you're struggling, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/Courtney Ryan. Thanks again, BetterHelp, for supporting this channel. The next habit that ruins relationships is nagging, nitpicking, lecturing. You know the drill. I think an important point to mention within this one is trying to change your partner. By nagging, by lecturing, by begging, the end goal is typically to change someone into what we want them to be, or do something that we want them to do that is not who they actually are. We have to accept people as they are instead of trying to mold them into what we want them to be. I think this nagging and nitpicking often stems from a need for control, which often portrays itself as us trying to change people. If someone is consistently expressing criticism without providing any affirmations or positive feedback, it can indicate a negative or unhealthy communication pattern. And, criticism can be constructive when offered in a respectful and considerate manner, but if it comes from a pattern of constantly nitpicking or finding fault, it can completely erode the emotional connection between two people. It's disrespectful. Healthy relationships thrive on support, understanding, and acceptance rather than constant criticism, constant nitpicking, constant nagging. It's important to communicate openly and respectfully about concerns you might be having, but doing so in a way that's going to foster growth and mutual respect and not resentment. The issue with nagging in a relationship is that it often involves repetitive and negative communication patterns. It can create a cycle of frustration, of defensiveness, and again, as I mentioned, resentment, which is not an effective way to communicate or to resolve conflicts. Constantly nagging can make it difficult for your partner to truly hear and understand your concerns. The person who's doing the nagging may feel unheard or ignored, while the person being nagged may feel constantly criticized or controlled. Neither one is great. It also creates an imbalance in your relationship where one person assumes the role of the constant criticizer and the other person feels constantly criticized. Constant nagging can push your partner away emotionally and make them feel judged, attacked, or unappreciated. As a result, they might withdraw, emotionally detach, or become defensive, which can weaken this emotional connection between the two of you. So to avoid the negative consequences that come along with nagging and nitpicking, I think it's important to foster open and respectful communication. Instead of nagging, try expressing your concerns and needs using I statements, focusing on specific issues, and discussing potential solutions together. Communicating through active listening, empathy, and finding constructive ways to address concerns can help maintain a much healthier dynamic and are far better habits than nitpicking, nagging, or trying to change someone. The next habit that's ruining your relationship is neglecting yourself. When you neglect yourself, it not only negatively impacts you, but also your significant other. Neglecting your own needs, whether that be physically, emotionally, or mentally, can lead to increased stress levels, burnout, overall dissatisfaction in life. When you neglect self-care, you might become emotionally drained or physically exhausted, making it really difficult to invest energy and attention into your relationship. A lack of self-care can also ruin your self-esteem and your self-worth over time. When you don't prioritize your own well-being, it can lead to feelings of inadequacy or resentment. This might negatively impact your confidence and, in return, your ability to contribute positively to your relationship. A lot of people who do this become overly dependent on their partner for validation, support, or just general happiness, which can then create a really unhealthy dynamic where your partner feels burdened and overwhelmed, which can lead to strain and dissatisfaction in the relationship. Get into the habit and understand the importance of pursuing your own interests, goals, and passions within your relationship. When you neglect your own growth, you might become stagnant or unfulfilled, which can impact your overall happiness and consequently your relationship. Taking care of yourself is obviously essential for your own well-being, but also the health of your relationship. The better you are on your own, the better you can be for the people around you. I see so many people get into relationships and become too comfortable, too complacent. They completely let themselves go physically, mentally, emotionally, and then end up relying on their partner for their happiness, and ultimately end up wildly disappointed. Your partner is not and should not be your entire source of validation and happiness, and putting that burden on them is incredibly unrealistic and unhealthy. I also think that letting yourself go, whether it be physically, mentally, and emotionally, is incredibly disrespectful to not only yourself, but also your partner. The next habit that ruins relationships is keeping score. Keeping score in a relationship where you constantly tally up perceived imbalances or wrongdoings is a habit that can cause extreme resentment in a transactional dynamic within your relationship. One partner might keep a mental tally of every single favor or gesture that they've done for the other person, and then expect a similar level of reciprocation and become resentful if they feel their efforts are not matched completely equally. This can create a transactional dynamic where each partner feels obligated to pay back the other person rather than freely giving from a place of love or kindness. And unfortunately, this can lead to viewing everything in your relationship as either deposits or withdrawals from a sort of emotional bank account. They keep track of every positive or negative action and use it as a measure of the other person's commitment or love, which is obviously not healthy. While it's important to have a balance of both give and take, it won't always or ever be perfectly equal. A relationship is a give and take. It's not always going to be equal. And while I think it's important to make sure that you're not in a one-sided relationship where this person is consistently taking from you and never giving, it's important to know that it might never be completely equal, and that's okay. Expecting it to be perfectly equal is going to breed resentment and a constant sense of entitlement or victimhood, which are obviously not going to help your relationship. So instead of keeping score, it's important to focus on actual generosity, compassion, and understanding. Instead, practice effective communication, active listening, and being able to find solutions together. The next habit is refusing to compromise. Compromise is an essential component of any healthy relationship. It involves both people being willing to give and to take and to find mutually agreeable solutions to conflicts and differences. Refusing to make compromises and operating as if the world revolves around you is a recipe for disaster in a relationship and is extremely unhealthy and imbalanced. Someone who is unable to compromise is a walking red flag, and also how they react when they don't get their way speaks volumes. So don't let this be you. And I know that our society has painted a picture of don't make any compromises because with the right person you won't have to, and yada yada yada, and I'm sorry, but that's a bunch of baloney. Every single relationship requires a level of compromise, and I think it's important to know this going in so that you can work on this while you're single. You're not always going to get your way, and the world does not revolve around you, and how you react and respond to that speaks volumes of your character. The next habit is having unrealistic expectations, and as you guys know, because I've talked about this in a handful of videos at this point, this is such a big problem currently happening, and I really want to take this opportunity to reiterate just how detrimental this can be. If you have unrealistic expectations about relationships or have a habit of holding your partner to an unrealistic standard, this can ruin your relationship. And the reason why unrealistic expectations keep people single and ruin relationships is by causing them to reject potentially compatible partners, or by making it really difficult for them to find someone who meets their incredibly unrealistic criteria. It's important to have standards, but it's also important to be realistic and open-minded in order to find a healthy and fulfilling relationship. Now, this includes, but is certainly not limited to, the following. Expecting perfection in yourself or from your partner. Newsflash, perfection doesn't exist, you will never find it. Expecting instant chemistry or a spark because of ideas like the one or soulmates. I've talked about this extensively in other videos, not going to get into it here, but this is unrealistic. Expecting someone to fulfill all of your emotional needs or complete you. A bunch of baloney. Expecting someone to change for you specifically. Again, we can't change people. We have to accept them as they are. If you're not okay with that, you shouldn't be with them. And expecting your partner to be a mind reader. Now, of course, there are far more than that. Those are just some of the standouts that I see happening more often. I think it's important for everyone to come back down to earth and to be realistic about what they're looking for in a partner and, what they're actually bringing into a relationship. I think a lot of people have an inflated view of themselves and a bit of a superiority complex that is ruining relationships and, quite honestly, ruining people's chances of even finding a relationship. I'll link some videos that I've done on unrealistic expectations down in the description because I have done so many videos about this and I've covered this extensively. I've gone into the nitty-gritty. I've given details. So instead of reiterating that here, I'll just link it below so you guys can go check out other content that I've done where I really dive much deeper into the topic of unrealistic expectations. So that's all I have for 6 habits that ruin relationships. If you liked this video or found it helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel to be in the loop for when I release new content. I would love to hear from you guys down in the comments. What are some other habits that you think are ruining relationships? What are some habits that you think are good for relationships, that you think contribute to the success and longevity of a relationship? Would just love to hear your own personal stories and experiences down in the comments below. If you haven't already, be sure to follow me over on Instagram at Courtney Christine Ryan. I love connecting with all of you guys over on there as well. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.